Hi, it's Yoojin Lee, and you're listening to Money Crashers Podcast. I'm here to make your financial life better by helping you make wiser choices about managing, saving, investing, and spending money. Today, I have with me Dr. Richard Park. I call you doctor, but I know you haven't been a practicing physician for a while, and you actually did not go to college for medicine. As a matter of fact, you literally didn't go to college because you couldn't afford it. Instead, you worked at a one-hour photo shop in Manhattan. The listeners may be confused, so let's brief them on your resume, shall we? So you graduated from Stuyvesant High School in 1990. My sister actually graduated from there too, but that was the year she was born. It might be great that if I didn't offend the guests, but you then graduated from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. How did you end up getting your medical degree from Albert Einstein College of Medicine?
Right. So yeah, you can certainly be a pre-med. A pre-med is not technically a major. Mm-hmm. So I majored in business at Penn, and I took all the requisite pre-med courses and I applied. So yeah, you don't have to be there's no such thing as a necessarily pre-med major.
Got it.
I ended up doing both.
Got it. And I know you were the co-founder and CEO of this tiny organization no one has ever heard about called CityMD. That did not disrupt the hospital care system at all, right? So how did you end up starting and opening CityMD?
Yeah, Yoojin, thanks for mentioning CityMD and that. So, in 2010 December is when our first CityMD opened on the east side. And so just to backtrack on some of the things you said, after graduating high school, I opened up a one-hour photo store. Mm-hmm. And, I did that for about 10 years. So I spent 10 years doing 1 hour photo, and I commuted to Penn. And then I did almost 10 years of emergency medicine. But if you think about CityMD, it's 1 hour medicine. It's very similar to 1 hour photo. It's the same concept. And so in fact, I don't feel like I've done anything different over the past 25, 30 years. It feels like it's one long continuous journey with some slight tweaks and variations.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. If I may expound on that, there was no epiphany, there's no eureka moment when we started CityMD. I had two children at the time. They're 23 and 21 now, and they're both, handicapped and challenged. And so really my singular goal was to work in the ER forever because I loved working in the emergency room. But just to have something on the side to provide for my kids. And so that really was the genesis of it. Nothing much more grander than that. It's just life has a way of pulling you and dragging you along to circumstances that you can't possibly forecast or foresee. Mm-hmm. And Yoojin, as you know, many Koreans that live in New York, we're merchants. We open stores, we close stores, we put up drywall. And so I was no different. And so, no fear of opening up a store, signing a lease, and so that background, that heritage is what lends itself to 1 hour medicine, now known as CityMD.
Wow, that's amazing. There's so much to unpack there that I really want to talk about. First thing is, so you mentioned that you have two handicapped children. I was just wondering, how much does it cost to provide for children who are handicapped in whatever way, shape, or form?
Yeah. It's just not parents of handicapped children. It's any parent. Mm-hmm. How much resources, how many dollars do you need to feel that your kids are going to be safe forever? I don't think anyone ever feels like it's enough, particularly if your children are handicapped, if they're unable to fend for themselves. And so, I don't think there's any dollar amount that people feel completely safe. Now, with that being said, how much does it cost? I mean, it depends on the type of life you want them to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There is this one speaking engagement that you did that I found on YouTube. And as much admiration I have for you and your accomplishments, I think it was this one video that I watched that made me respect you in a whole different level. You were speaking about humanity medicine at the Rockefeller Center, I believe. And you were talking about how caring for people can work. And that you mentioned that you were driving in Manhattan and you're passing by homeless people and you felt desensitized looking at them. These people have no food, no shelter. But then it's, for some reason, your kids who are handicapped, because of some sort of luck that they were born into just the right, with the right parents, they wouldn't be living in the streets like them. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for listening to that. I vaguely recollect speaking about it. But yeah, if not for the grace of God, our kids, my kids, you and I, we could all be that person. We could be, like, literally, I could be outside, hit by a car, get on pain medications, become addicted, and hit the streets. That's all possible. It's a sliver of a thin line between us and them, and yet we take care of our pets better than we take care of people, and so it is something to be. We need to respect everyone, all human beings, all people. They all have their own dreams. I'm sure that homeless person has their own dreams and thoughts and wants and desires, just like all of us, no different. So, and in particular, when I look at my children, if not for just circumstance, again, the grace of God, they would be in jail. They would be misunderstood. God knows how many children like my children are in the penal system, homeless and or in jail.
Yeah. One question. So you started City MD, but then you ended up selling in 2017 for $600 million. I am so proud of you. That is amazing. And currently you are on the advisory board at NYU. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
I actually graduated there in 2007. So so thank you for that. Thank you for being on the board. And can you tell me about your roles at Eston Health, Arch Care, and Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine?
Right. And so in 2000, just to kind of, for the record, 2017, the practice was valuated at $600 million, roughly $600 million. And we had a majority investment by Warburg Pincus. But selling, it means a lot of different things. So I'm still a shareholder. I'm still a partner at City MD. And so you don't sell everything. I never want to sell all my shares. I always want to be a part of that City MD Summit, now known as Summit Health's journey. But after leaving in 2019, City MD and Summit Medical Group in New Jersey. Summit Medical Group is a multi-specialty group, 100 years old, and we joked that City MD was 100 months old. The two practices merged under the leadership of Dr. LeBenger. And in 2019, that's when I left. I left, and my partner and I, In-Sun Huang, also, he was the former head of global healthcare and retail at Warburg. We started Ascend Capital Partners, and it's a mid-market private equity firm. And so we invest in healthcare services and technology. So, of which Ascend Medical, Consensus Health, Partners in Care, Render Physicians, Illumed, Elation Medical Record-Keeping Technologies. We have a number of partnerships that we've invested in and worked together through. And so I'm on many of these boards. And also, for the record, I'm on NYU Wagner School of Public Health, their advisory board, not on NYU's board. That's
gotcha.
Heavy hitters.
And so how do your roles at Eston differ from being the chairman and CEO of Care About and Render? Am I saying that correctly, Render?
Yeah, Render. So it is a little confusing system. So Ascend Partners is the private equity fund, and it has a wholly owned subsidiary called Care About. Care About, which has its own leadership team, and Care About is our holding company that holds investments in all our physician provider group practices. So Eston Medical, Render, Consensus, others, wholly owned through Care About, the holding company. So I am the CEO of Care About, but really it's really led by a gentleman, one of my co-founders, Dr. Ned Shami. He runs Care About, and And I also, it's confusing because it's not typical. I also happen to be a founder and one of the organizers of Render Physicians, one of our portfolio companies.
That's amazing. How do you have time for all these businesses and positions? And you do a lot of volunteer work as well.
Listen, everyone is busy in New York, but when you have great partners and great friends and great colleagues, it's magical. Sometimes you just have to look at each other and you know what needs to be done. So I have the fortune of having Dr. Shami, Stephen Kang, David Shi, Robert, a bunch of people that I've worked for with almost 10 years at CityMD. Mm-hmm. And actually, in Nadal's case and Dave Shi's case, I've known those guys for almost 20 years, back maybe even longer, back when we were residents in the emergency room together at Long Island Jewish Hospital. So when you work with people that you know exactly how each of you will behave. It just is so much, not just efficient, but so much more pleasant. And the level of trust you have with people you know and love, it's completely something else. And it allows for much faster, efficient progress.
You're absolutely right. It's the team that you're on that changes everything. Not just in qualifications. Obviously, everyone is going to be qualified if they apply, right? But it's just you, like you said, it's like that magic. You just vibe well together, and you guys probably bring out the best in each other, right?
Indeed, teamwork makes the dream work, as you hear people say.
Yeah.
It absolutely does.
So, do you feel like it's the same with you and your wife? How are your dynamics in the house? Because it can be easy with handicapped children. I'm sure there are so many levels of frustration, of maybe even resentment. How do you guys work around all of that? And how do you support each other?
It's really simple. It's not in our culture to compliment our wives. As you know, in our Korean culture, we call it pebuchu. But with that being said, it's all her. She's amazing. My parents live with us, so she has a lot of responsibilities between a husband that's borderline functional as a spouse, and living with your in-laws and caring for two adult children now. So, but yes, and she doesn't have any help, not really, around the home. So yeah, she's a superwoman, her, Nicole.
And she's an amazing cook, right? I remember her favorite thing was food, and I remember like years ago, she told me that if she had one talent, it's that she could walk into any kitchen, look around, and make something with whatever it is that's there, like with whatever ingredients. I'm like, that's amazing. That's so admirable, because I have no interest in food or cooking. I will eat the same thing over and over again. I'm not creative in that way either. I can't really think. My favorite thing with food, it would probably be plating it. Like with kids' snacks, making it cute, putting the goldfish here, and then like, making it some sort of like art. Yeah.
I think, Yoojin, the reason why my wife is so amazing and able to handle all of this is, she too had a very complex childhood. And, many of us do, right? Mm-hmm. Immigrants do. I had some more financial difficulties, and she had some more complex ones. But when your expectations in life are so low to begin with, because of how we all were raised, of course, when we have handicapped children, of course we do. And of course, and it's God-given. It doesn't faze her. She's glad, she's joyful. No woe is me, no why is me. It's like, of course. And so because of that resilience, never a day in her life is she down or is she upset or things are unfair. Mm-hmm. And to be quite practically, the past 10 years has been good for us, ways that we couldn't have ever imagined. But even before that, that's just the way she is. And I think that's part of the grit and resilience of hardworking American immigrants. Mm-hmm. Which you understand, mm-hmm.
When you look at your children, do you look at them as from the eyes of a physician, or do you just look at them as like with the eyes of a father? And is there ever a difference?
I don't think it's different. I think it's the eyes of a father. I don't think that being a physician changes anything, not in my case at least.
Okay.
I was an emergency medicine physician, doctor, and it's a little different. We are not your long-term care physicians. We're more like emergent technicians.
Right.
We come in, our job is to stabilize you, make sure we keep you alive or take care of the immediate problem. So certainly I view them as any dad would.
Speaking of the emergency room, can you tell me one of the most impactful cases or patients that you had to see? Is there one that you remember that was so traumatic?
There's a lot of, so I get asked that question, as all ER doctors do, and we all have our, humorous stories and some traumatic stories. I'll tell you the one that really sticks out, though. It's probably not what you expect. But I remember taking care of a patient. He was an alcoholic. And this, I won't mention his name, but he was what we call a frequent flyer in the ER. And he'd come in, every other day, every week. And when he comes in, it's a lot of work. And quite honestly, all the staff, when he comes in, we groan. Who's going to have to pick up this patient, this guy again? Because he was difficult. Typically, you have to hold him down. You get him some rest. I mean, it's difficult. Anyway, one day he came in and he died. Right, so we call coded. He was brought in unresponsive, and we're working on him. He was brought into the trauma bay, and we're caring for him, and it's a mess. He was fairly young. I think he was in his 40s, and he died. Right, and so we did our job. We spent a lot of time on him. Anyway, but the part of the story that I want to relay is his mom came in. We had to call the mom, and our job was to tell the mom that your son had passed, that your alcoholic son passed. So I remember her cradling her son in her arms and saying his name. It's over now. You can rest. And then she did something that, us, the entire team, because the nurses were there, my residents were there. Because, when you work in the ER, when patients come in like this, sometimes you do heroic measures that you learn from. So oftentimes physicians learn while trying to rescue this patient. But often you don't feel anything because this happens so often and you get desensitized. Mm-hmm. Here she is, and the mom is cradling her son and says to us, all of us, I loved him the most. And she explained, I have 3 sons. One's a lawyer, one's a doctor. This is my baby. And she said, of the 3, I loved him the most. And that kind of put it all into perspective for us. And I don't know what it was, but the nurse Daisy said to me, isn't that how God looks at us? And I thought that was, I'm not sure, I'm a Christian, but I'm sure many weren't. But we all kind of understood what that meant. And so if I had to tell one story, one impactful story, that was it. And, when your child is hurting the most, and this is before I had children at that time, but I understood.
It's amazing. I have a question. So talking about parenting, right? How were your parents when they were raising you? Were they very strict? I know Korean Americans, they stress education on their children a lot. And obviously you're very extremely intelligent. You went to all the right schools. Is it from your own ambitions, or were they the ones that were pushing you and pressuring you?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I never got, of course they asked how well you're doing in school, but I was a very self-motivated child. Mm-hmm. So I didn't go to the typical prep schools because we couldn't afford it. I was working with my parents. And so when I was growing up, I thought if I owned 10 1-hour, the 24-hour food stores or salad bars in New York City, that was success. So academic achievement was never pushed on me, or that's not what I thought. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I was self-motivated. I think I'm maybe not the smartest person, but I have grit and I work hard, mm-hmm. and I prove, I always do, and I feel that to this day. I'm self-driven. I think it's a lot of internal drive for whatever reason. Mm-hmm.
So you've done so much, you've accomplished so much, especially in medicine, but how did you come up with, well, you told us about CityMD, but like what is your true goal, and what is your mission, and what are you going to do next? I would say, yeah.
I think Ascend Partners is a reflection of that. And so our mission is to empower entrepreneurs to help communities serve vulnerable populations. Vulnerable populations. And so those that are not spoken for, the antithesis of what we're trying to do is enemy words would be things like marginalized, ignored, forgotten, unloved. And so we serve vulnerable populations through empowering entrepreneurs. It's a 15-year fund, which is unusual. We are more patient, and we look for this world. So, in our portfolio, our partner practices are a reflection of that. Vulnerable populations, the handicapped, the poor, and the elderly, at least in healthcare, are by definition Medicaid and Medicare. And in New York, they tend to be ethnic. So the thesis is, SM Medical serves 350 physicians in the Bronx. They're the only organized single practice other than hospitals that serve a community. When the rest of the world ran away, Dr. Segal and his team ran toward the Bronx and is doing some fantastic work there. The Chinese population, there's an unbelievable amount of poverty in the Chinese community. And these are patients that show up to work 7 p.m. at night and work overnight cleaning offices and bathrooms that are invisible to society and don't feel that they deserve or can advocate for themselves. Those are our patients in the Chinese community, and so on and so forth. So this is a culmination of all the skills that we've learned at CityMD and otherwise as a physician, but more as people that understand building systems and raising the floor, not necessarily the ceiling, but empowering physicians by raising the floor, or at least building the floor, so that we can help these populations. Oftentimes, these patients, Medicare, Medicaid, in New York in particular, are ethnic, and many of them are not equipped and they're capitalized. You will find that the floor is not there. They have Windows 95. They don't have up-to-date computers. They don't use email. And when the world is asking and tasking them for complex data needs and risk-based medical health care, when you don't use email and you don't have Windows 90, you have Windows 95, they're asking them the impossible. That's our Ascend and Care About's core relative strength is mud wrestling. We mud wrestle and we install flooring. We don't work on the pitcher, we work on the catcher. Oftentimes, you wonder why a high school kid or an elementary school child can't catch your 90-mile-per-hour fastball. And oftentimes we think that changing the pitcher, maybe a faster fastball would work. It's not the pitcher sometimes, it's the catcher. So we work on the catcher equation of vulnerable populations and their provider groups. So in a way, I think this is the next, this is my career going forward.
That's amazing. It's clear to me that your drive comes from compassion, and there's nothing I respect more than someone with authority or power that uses it with heart, So it's such an honor to be in the presence of someone that is like that. So thank you for all that you do. And Dr. Richard, honestly, your actions speak so much louder than your words. And I hope you're proud of yourself. Are you?
Well, thank you, Yoojin. But you do know that there's so many unsung heroes that do a lot of the work, that show up at 7 p.m. at midnight and work overnight with 2 or 3 jobs, that care for their families and their children. Those are the heroes. We have the easy job. We have the sort of the spotlight. What we have truly, as you know, and I don't just say this lightly, we're not the heroes. There's millions and millions of heroes out there that live the daily life when things look bleak and helpless, because they're living for their children, as you know. So thank you for that. We are proud, but we're also, we relate and we appreciate the real heroes out there.
All right. Dr. Richard, thank you so much for being on this podcast with me. I really appreciate it. And if the listeners want to follow your endeavors, where can they go? Is there a website?
ascendpartners.com.
Okay. I'll be sure to link it.
Thank you very much, Yoojin. It was my honor to be on this podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.